The apartment breathes differently at 3 in the morning. Not silence, exactly, but something close to it. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own heartbeat, of the way air moves through your lungs, of every small sound that daylight usually drowns out. The broken fan in the corner churns its lazy rhythm, more wheeze than breeze, and somewhere in the building's bones, pipes settle with soft metallic sighs. I lie on my back, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looks like a moth with one wing torn away. Sleep has been elusive lately. Not for any reason I can name, just the restless energy that comes with being 22 and caught between who you were and who you might become. My sheets are twisted around my legs, damp with the kind of heat that August nights trap in old buildings with poor ventilation. The mattress beneath me is cheap, foam that's already losing its shape after 8 months of use. But it's mine. This room is mine. This small corner of independence, carved out with student loans and weekend shifts at the campus cafe, belongs to me. Then I hear footsteps in the hallway. Soft, deliberate. Reese's room is directly across from mine, and I know the sound of his bare feet on the hardwood floors. He's always been a night wanderer, getting up for water for the bathroom, sometimes just to stand at the living room window and look out at the empty street below. I've grown used to these midnight migrations over the months we've lived together. They're part of the apartment's rhythm now, like the fan's wheeze and the neighbor's muffled television. But tonight the footsteps stop outside my door. I hold my breath, waiting for the sound to continue down the hall, waiting for the soft click of the bathroom door or the kitchen faucet running. Instead, there's a hesitation, a moment stretched thin between decision and action. Then my door handle turns with the quietest possible click. The hallway light creates a thin yellow stripe across my floor as the door opens. Reese stands there, a silhouette against the glow, his hair disheveled and shoulders bare above the faded t-shirt he sleeps in. Even in the dark, I can feel his uncertainty, the way he hovers at the threshold like he's forgotten what he came to say. I don't move, don't speak. Something about the moment feels fragile, like acknowledging it might make it disappear. He steps into my room and closes the door behind him, erasing the stripe of light. Now we're both in darkness, and I can hear him breathing, not quite steady, not quite calm. He moves carefully across the small space, avoiding the pile of textbooks by my desk, the laundry basket I keep meaning to empty. When he reaches the edge of my bed, he stops again. "Can't sleep," he says finally. His voice is lower than usual, thick with something I can't identify. The silence in my room is too much tonight. I keep thinking I can hear my own thoughts echoing off the walls. This isn't the first time he's sought out company in the middle of the night. Reese has always been someone who needs people around him, not in a demanding way, but like plants need light. He draws energy from presence, from conversation, from the simple fact of not being alone. In the daylight, he fills spaces with laughter and stories and an easy confidence that makes other people gravitate toward him. But at night, sometimes that confidence cracks just enough to reveal something more vulnerable underneath. I shift over without thinking, making room. The movement is automatic, born from months of late-night study sessions where one of us would collapse onto the other's bed, too tired to care about personal space. But this feels different, more deliberate, more necessary. He slips under my sheets with the careful movements of someone trying not to disturb the air itself. The mattress dips under his weight, and suddenly the small twin bed that has always felt adequate becomes intimate in a way that makes my chest tighten. He lies on his back beside me, close enough that I can feel the heat radiating from his skin, close enough that our shoulders almost touch. We don't speak for a long time. The fan continues its broken rhythm, and somewhere outside, a car passes with the soft hiss of tires on asphalt. Reese's breathing gradually slows, but I can sense that sleep isn't coming easily for him either. There's a tension in the way he holds himself, like he's listening for something, waiting for something, though neither of us could say what. This is dangerous territory, though I can't articulate why. We're roommates, friends, two people sharing space and bills and the mundane intimacies of daily life, fighting over shower time, splitting grocery costs, falling asleep to the same Netflix series playing on his laptop in the living room. Nothing about this should feel loaded with meaning, but it does. Maybe it's the darkness that makes everything feel heightened, more honest. Or maybe it's the way his presence beside me seems to fill all the empty spaces I didn't realize existed until now. His arm brushes against mine as he adjusts his position, and the contact sends something electric through my nervous system. Not quite desire, not quite fear, but something between the two that I don't have words for. I think about the months we've lived together, the slow accumulation of shared moments that have built into something I'm only now beginning to recognize. The way he lingers in doorways when he talks to me, like he's reluctant to leave. The comfortable silences that stretch between us during dinner, punctuated only by the clink of forks against plates. The morning I found him making coffee for both of us without being asked, and how natural it felt to accept the mug from his hands, our fingers brushing for just a moment longer than necessary. He turns onto his side, facing me, and I feel the shift in his breathing that means he's about to speak. But instead of words, he simply moves closer, not dramatically, just a subtle adjustment that brings his forehead near my shoulder. The gesture is so careful, so tentative, that it breaks something open in my chest. I should say something. Ask if he's okay, make some joke about the broken air conditioning, offer to make tea, or put on a movie. Anything to restore the normal boundaries between us. Instead, I find myself turning slightly toward him, creating space for him to settle more comfortably against me. His head finds the hollow between my shoulder and collarbone with an ease that suggests our bodies have been having conversations our minds haven't caught up to yet. The weight of him there feels both foreign and familiar, like remembering a dream you didn't know you'd had. His breathing deepens, evening out into the rhythm of approaching sleep, but I remain wide awake. Every point of contact between us feels magnified. The warmth of his temple against my chest, the way his hair tickles my jaw, the gentle pressure of his hand that has somehow found its way to rest against my ribs. My pulse hammers against my throat, and I'm grateful for the darkness that hides my face, hides the confusion and longing that I'm certain must be written across my features. The ceiling stain looks different from this angle, less like a wounded moth, more like a bird in flight. I trace its edges with my eyes while trying to make sense of the storm in my chest. This is Reese, my roommate, the person who leaves dirty dishes in the sink and steals my hoodies and makes terrible jokes that somehow always make me laugh anyway. The person whose presence in our shared space has become as essential as electricity or running water. But lying here in the dark, with his breath warm against my skin and his body curved into mine with perfect, terrifying trust, I realize that somewhere along the way, he's become something else entirely. Something I don't have a name for, something that makes my hands tremble and my throat close with the weight of unspoken truths. He murmurs something in his sleep, just a soft sound, wordless in content, and settles deeper against me. His arm drapes across my stomach, loose and unconscious, but the gesture feels like a claim, like an anchor. I close my eyes and try to match my breathing to his, try to find some pathway towards sleep, but my mind won't quiet. This moment feels suspended outside of time, existing in the space between one day and the next, between friendship and something unnamed, between safety and the kind of beautiful, terrible vulnerability that changes everything. I know that when morning comes, we'll have to return to our usual roles. Roommates, friends, two people navigating the careful choreography of shared space. But right now, in this darkness, with his warmth pressed against my side and his trust given so freely, I allow myself to exist in the truth of this feeling, even if I can't yet speak it aloud. The fan wheezes its broken song, and outside, the world sleeps. But here, in this small room that smells like laundry detergent and the faint sweetness of the candle Reese lit earlier, something has shifted. Something has begun. And as I finally drift towards sleep, his head still pillowed on my shoulder, I'm not sure if I'm more afraid of what this might become or of what it might not. Morning arrives with the cruel brightness that August brings to windows facing east. I wake to the sound of Reese moving carefully around the room, gathering his things with the quiet precision of someone trying not to disturb a sleeping person. But I'm not sleeping anymore. Haven't been for the past 20 minutes, lying still with my eyes closed, listening to him breathe, feeling the absence of his warmth where it had pressed against my side all night. He slips out without a word, and I hear the soft click of my door closing, followed by his footsteps retreating to his own room. The shower starts running a few minutes later, and only then do I allow myself to open my eyes and stare at the ceiling stain that has become my unwilling confidant. Our apartment exists in a strange pocket of time, caught between the undergraduate chaos that surrounds us and something more adult, more permanent than either of us is quite ready for. It's a two-bedroom unit on the third floor of a converted house that was probably beautiful once, maybe 50 years ago, before it was carved up into student housing and painted over with the kind of beige that landlords used to hide decades of wear. The kitchen is barely large enough for one person to cook, which makes our morning routine a careful dance of timing and compromise. Reese showers first because he takes longer, not out of vanity, but because he seems to use the hot water as a way to ease into wakefulness, standing under the spray until the ancient water heater gives up and forces him out. I make coffee while he's in there, strong enough to cut through the fog of too little sleep and too many thoughts. By the time he emerges, hair damp and cheeks flushed from the steam, I've already claimed the small table by the window with my textbooks and laptop. This is how we've learned to share space without stepping on each other, through routines that have developed organically over months of trial and error. He takes his coffee black and drinks it standing at the counter, scrolling through his phone while I highlight passages about developmental psychology and try not to notice the way the morning light catches in his hair. Our lives have become intertwined in ways that feel both inevitable and surprising. We split everything evenly: rent, utilities, groceries, keeping careful track in a notebook that lives on the kitchen counter, though neither of us has looked at it in weeks. The math works out more or less fairly, and the small discrepancies get lost in the larger generosity of shared living. He buys extra milk when he notices we're running low. I pick up his favorite bread when I'm at the store, the expensive kind with seeds that he eats for breakfast with honey. The apartment holds our lives like a container that's almost too small for what we've put inside it. My books stack in corners and spread across surfaces, evidence of a psychology major who takes too many credits and studies with the desperate intensity of someone who can't afford to fail. Reese's presence is more scattered but equally persistent. His jacket draped over chairs, his running shoes kicked off by the door, the guitar he plays badly but enthusiastically leaning against the wall by the couch. The walls are thin enough that privacy becomes a negotiation. I've learned the rhythm of his sleep, the way he talks to himself when he thinks no one can hear, practicing presentations or working through problems aloud. He's learned that I cry sometimes while reading, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming recognition that comes when words capture something true about being human. We've never discussed these intimacies directly, but they become part of the apartment's atmosphere, like the smell of coffee and the sound of the neighbors arguing through the floor. My job at the campus cafe provides just enough money to cover my half of everything, with a little left over for textbooks and the occasional movie ticket. It's mindless work mostly, steaming milk, calling out orders, wiping down tables, but it suits my need for routine and the way it leaves my mind free to wander. I work the morning shift 3 days a week, which means rising before dawn and walking across campus while the world is still quiet and cool. Reese has always been different from me in ways that feel both complementary and mysterious. Where I move through the world carefully, he takes up space with an ease that I've never quite understood. His laugh is the kind that makes other people want to laugh too, even when they haven't heard the joke. He studies business with the casual confidence of someone who assumes success, not out of arrogance, but from some deep well of self-assurance that I've always envied. Our friends know us as a unit now. Elijah and Reese, the roommates who show up to parties together and leave together, who share inside jokes and finish each other's sentences in the way that people do when they've learned each other's rhythms. They tease us sometimes about being an old married couple, and we laugh it off because that's what you do when people point out truths you're not ready to examine. But in the quiet hours, when it's just the two of us in our small space, the easy friendship becomes something more complex. There's a tenderness in the way he brings me aspirin when I'm stressed about exams. There's something almost protective in the way I make sure there's food in the refrigerator when he's been too busy to shop. These small acts of care have accumulated over months, building into something that feels too intimate for mere roommates, but too undefined for anything else. The apartment witnesses all of it. Our comfortable silences, our late-night conversations that range from trivial to profound, the way we've learned to exist in each other's orbit without collision. It holds the memory of shared meals eaten standing at the kitchen counter, of study sessions that turn into philosophical discussions, of the gradual erosion of the boundaries that strangers maintain. Last night changed something, though neither of us has acknowledged it yet. This morning, our routine continues as always: coffee and newspapers, the careful choreography of two people getting ready for their separate days. But underneath the normalcy, I can feel the weight of his head on my shoulder, the trust he offered in his sleep, the way my body responded to his presence with a recognition I'm not brave enough to name. 3 weeks pass before the night that changes everything again. 3 weeks of careful normalcy, of morning routines resumed and boundaries quietly restored. We don't talk about that night when he sought comfort in my bed, though I catch him sometimes looking at me with an expression I can't quite read, something between gratitude and question, like he's waiting for me to bring it up first. I don't. Neither does he. And life continues its familiar rhythm. The evening starts like so many others. I'm at the kitchen table, laptop open, working through a research paper on attachment theory that's due Monday. The irony isn't lost on me. Spending my Friday night analyzing the psychological foundations of human connection while carefully not examining my own. Reese has been out since late afternoon. Something about meeting friends for dinner and drinks, and the apartment feels different in his absence. Quieter, yes, but also somehow incomplete, like a song with missing notes. When I hear his key in the lock, it's past 11. His footsteps in the hallway are heavier than usual, less sure. I look up from my screen as he appears in the kitchen doorway, and immediately I know something is wrong. His hair is disheveled, not from wind, but from running his hands through it repeatedly. His eyes are red-rimmed, and there's a brittleness in his posture that I've never seen before. "Hey," I say, closing my laptop. The word hangs in the air between us, carrying more weight than such a simple greeting should. He doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he leans against the doorframe and looks at me with an expression so raw it makes my chest tighten. For a moment, I think he might cry, though I've never seen Reese cry. He's always been the one who holds things together, who faces the world with that easy confidence that makes everyone else feel safer. "She ended it," he says finally. His voice is flat, drained of its usual warmth. "Sarah, she said she needs space to figure out what she wants, that she can't be in a relationship right now. Sarah." They've been together since sophomore year, on and off, one of those relationships that everyone assumes will eventually lead somewhere permanent. She's been a presence in our apartment more weekends than not, her textbooks mixed with ours on the coffee table, her laugh echoing from his bedroom, her shampoo appearing in our shared shower. I've always liked her in the way you like your friend's significant other when they make your friend happy, but I've never examined too closely why her presence sometimes made me feel like an outsider in my own home. "I'm sorry," I tell him, and I mean it. Whatever complicated feelings I might have about Sarah, seeing Reese hurt like this hurts me too. "Come sit down." He moves slowly across the small space and drops into the chair across from me. In the harsh kitchen light, he looks younger than his 23 years, like the confident facade has been stripped away to reveal someone more fragile underneath. He puts his head in his hands, and his shoulders shake once, briefly, before he forces himself still. "I don't want to be alone tonight," he says without looking up. The words are muffled by his palms, but I hear the vulnerability in them, the admission that costs him something to make. I keep thinking about everything she said, and it just goes around and around in my head. I need not to think for a while. This is the invitation, though neither of us calls it that. This is the moment when the careful boundaries we've rebuilt over the past 3 weeks become negotiable again. I could suggest he call one of his other friends, could offer to make him tea and let him talk for the breakup at this kitchen table. But instead, I find myself standing and reaching for his hand. Come on, I say. Let's go watch something terrible on Netflix. He follows me to the living room, and I realize as we settle onto the couch that I've made a choice without fully understanding it. The living room is smaller than it should be for two people, furnished with a couch that's more love seat than sofa, and a coffee table cluttered with our accumulated life. Textbooks, empty mugs, the remote control that never works on the first try. I put on some mindless comedy, the kind of movie that requires no investment, no emotional energy. Reese sits beside me, close enough that our knees touch, and I can feel the tension radiating from his body like heat. He's not watching the screen. Instead, he stares at his hands, occasionally running them through his hair in that gesture I've come to recognize as his way of trying to hold himself together. About halfway through the movie, he shifts closer. Not dramatically, just a subtle adjustment that brings his shoulder against mine. I don't move away. There's something about his grief that makes ordinary boundaries feel less important, like crisis creates its own rules for closeness. I keep replaying it, he says quietly. The conversation, trying to figure out what I could have said differently, what I missed. She said she's been feeling this way for months, and I had no idea. How do you not know that the person you love is that unhappy? The question hangs between us, and I realize he's not really asking me. He's asking himself, working through the particular pain that comes when someone rewrites history, when they tell you that what you thought was solid was actually crumbling all along. Maybe she didn't know how to tell you. I offer. Sometimes people don't understand their own feelings until they're ready to face them. He turns to look at me then, and there's something in his expression that makes my pulse quicken. Like he's seeing me differently, like my words have landed somewhere deeper than I intended. You always know what to say, he tells me. You always make me feel less alone. The compliment should feel good, but instead it terrifies me. Because in this moment, with his grief raw between us and his body warm against mine, I can feel something shifting again. The same dangerous tenderness that filled my bedroom 3 weeks ago is blooming here in the television's blue glow. And I know that letting him stay close tonight will mean crossing another line we haven't drawn yet. But looking at his face, seeing the way the pain has made him smaller and more real, I know I can't ask him to carry his hurt alone. So when he lets his head fall onto my shoulder, the same gesture that changed everything before, I don't pull away. Instead, I reach for the blanket draped over the back of the couch and settle it around both of us. Outside, the world sleeps. But here in our small living room, with the fan's broken rhythm and the soft light flickering across our faces, something inevitable is beginning again. What begins as one night of comfort becomes a pattern that neither of us acknowledges, but both of us anticipate. The first few times, Reese arrives at my bedroom door with excuses. Can't sleep, too quiet, having dreams about Sarah, and I let him in because turning away someone's pain feels impossible. But as days turn into weeks, the excuses become thinner, more perfunctory, until eventually he simply appears in my doorway with a look that asks permission, and I pull back my covers without either of us needing to speak. My twin bed, which once felt adequate for my solitary sleep, transforms into something else entirely, with two bodies learning to share its narrow space. We develop an unconscious choreography. He enters from the left side, I shift toward the wall, and somehow we find positions that work. His arm becomes my pillow. My shoulder becomes his resting place. The heat we generate together turns the small room into its own ecosystem, separate from the rest of the apartment, from the rest of the world. The conversations that happen in the dark are different from the ones we have in daylight. There's something about the absence of sight that makes honesty easier, that strips away the careful performance of daily interaction and leaves only the essential truths. He tells me about growing up as the middle child in a family that communicated through achievement rather than affection, how he learned to be charming because being lovable seemed too risky. I tell him about the loneliness of being an only child raised by parents who loved each other so completely that I sometimes felt like I was intruding on their private world. These revelations come slowly, parceled out night after night, like gifts we're not sure the other person wants to receive. But they accumulate into something deeper than friendship, something that doesn't have a name we're willing to use. The physical intimacy develops with the same gradual inevitability. At first, we maintain careful boundaries, his body on his side of the bed, mine on mine, only occasional accidental contact and sleep. But the bed is small, and bodies have their own logic. His hand finds my wrist in the dark. My leg settles against his when I turn over. These touches register as comfort, as the natural result of sharing space. But underneath the innocuous explanation, something else is growing. I begin to notice things about him that have nothing to do with friendship. The way his breath hitches slightly when he's falling asleep, as if he's surprised by his own surrender to unconsciousness. The warmth that radiates from his skin even through his t-shirt, making the stuffy room feel less oppressive. The sound he makes when he dreams. Not words, just soft murmurs of contentment that make something clench in my chest with protective tenderness. He notices things too, though we don't discuss them. The way I curl into myself when I'm cold, how he adjusts his position to create more warmth around me. The fact that I sleep more soundly when he's there, that my usual restlessness settles into deeper rhythms. How I've started wearing softer t-shirts to bed, though I tell myself it's coincidence. Our daytime interactions become more careful, as if we're both aware that something is shifting and neither wants to be the first to name it. We give each other more space in the kitchen, speak more politely about mundane things, avoid lingering touches when we pass each other the coffee or reach for the same book. But the hyper-awareness of trying not to touch only makes every accidental contact more electric. The night he first reaches for my hand deliberately, not in sleep, not by accident, but with the conscious decision to bridge the space between us, neither of us acknowledges it. His fingers find mine in the dark, and instead of pulling away, I let him intertwine them. We lie there like that for what feels like hours, hands clasped between us, breathing in sync, both pretending it means nothing more than comfort. But it doesn't feel like nothing. It feels like a confession made in a language we're still learning to speak. The dreams start around this time. Not nightmares, but something more unsettling. Dreams where the careful boundaries we maintain in waking life dissolve completely, where the tenderness I feel for him in the dark transforms into something hungrier, more honest. I wake from these dreams with my heart racing and my body responding in ways that terrify me, because they feel less like fantasy and more like recognition. Like my subconscious is finally admitting what my conscious mind refuses to examine. If he has similar dreams, he doesn't mention them. But sometimes I catch him looking at me in the morning with an expression I can't interpret, something between confusion and longing, like he's trying to solve a problem he didn't know existed. The apartment becomes a stage for this unspoken choreography. Every shared meal, every evening spent reading on opposite ends of the couch, every casual conversation about classes or weather or weekend plans carries the weight of what we're not saying. The air feels thicker somehow, charged with the electricity of things withheld. Friends begin to notice our increased closeness, how we started finishing each other's sentences, how we move through social situations with the synchronized awareness of people who've learned each other's rhythms. They tease us about being inseparable, about our domestic compatibility, and we laugh because that's easier than examining why their jokes make us both uncomfortable. But at night, when the performances of day give way to the honesty of darkness, we let ourselves be whatever this is becoming. His body curved against mine, his breathing evening out in his sleep while I remain awake, hyper-aware of every point of contact between us. The weight of his arm across my stomach, the tickle of his hair against my neck, the way he unconsciously seeks my warmth even in sleep, turning toward me like a plant toward light. I know this can't continue indefinitely. The tension is building towards something that will demand acknowledgement, that will force us to name what we've been carefully not seeing. But for now, in these dark hours, I let myself exist in the space between friendship and something else, between safety and the kind of beautiful danger that changes everything. The night it happens, there's nothing special about the beginning. October has arrived with its promise of cooler weather, though our apartment still holds the day's heat like a closed fist. Reese appears in my doorway as he has so many nights before, silhouetted against the hallway light, and I make room for him in my bed without question. By now, this ritual has worn smooth grooves in our routine. The careful way he moves across my floor, the practiced settling of his body beside mine, the gradual slowing of breath as we both pretend to chase sleep. But tonight feels different from a moment he slides under my sheets. There's a restlessness in him that doesn't match his usual exhausted surrender to comfort. He shifts positions repeatedly, adjusts his pillow, turns toward me, and then away, as if he can't find the right arrangement of limbs and space. I lie still beside him, hyper-aware of his movement, of the way his unsettled energy fills the small room like electricity before a storm. We don't talk. We've learned that conversation in these moments can break the spell that allows this intimacy to exist. Better to let silence hold whatever this is, to avoid words that might force us to examine what we're doing. But his restlessness speaks louder than words, and after an hour of listening to him breathe in sharp, shallow bursts, I finally turn to face him. "Can't sleep?" I whisper, though the answer is obvious. He turns toward me in the darkness, and even though I can't see his face clearly, I can feel the intensity of his gaze. There's something different in the air between us tonight, something that makes my pulse quicken and my skin feel oversensitive to the heat radiating from his body. "I keep thinking," he says quietly. His voice is rough, like he's been holding these words back for too long. "About what this is, what we're doing." The words land between us like stones dropped in still water, sending ripples through the careful equilibrium we've maintained. This is the conversation we've both been avoiding, the acknowledgement that what started as comfort has become something else entirely, something that exists in the space between friendship and territory neither of us has mapped before. I don't know how to respond, because answering honestly would mean admitting that I think about it too. That I lie awake after he falls asleep, cataloging the weight of his arm across my chest, the way his breath tickles my collarbone, the warmth that pools between us in the narrow space of my bed. That I've started looking forward to these nights in a way that terrifies me. "I don't want to stop," he continues, and his voice is so soft, I almost think I've imagined it. "I know I should. I know this isn't what friends do. But I don't want to go back to sleeping alone." The confession breaks something open in my chest, some dam I've built to hold back the flood of recognition that's been building for weeks. Because I don't want him to stop either. I don't want to return to nights without his presence, without the comfort of his body beside mine, without the strange peace that comes from sharing sleep with someone who has learned the rhythm of your breathing. "Neither do I whisper back, and the admission feels like stepping off a cliff. We lie there in the aftermath of honesty, both of us breathing too carefully, both aware that we've crossed a line we've been pretending didn't exist. The silence stretches between us, heavy with possibility and fear in equal measure. Then he moves closer, not dramatically, just a subtle shift that brings his forehead almost to my shoulder, close enough that I can feel his breath against my skin. The contact sends electricity through my nervous system, making me hyper-aware of every point where our bodies almost touch. "Elijah," he says, and my name in his voice sounds different than it ever has before, softer, more intimate, like a secret he's been keeping. His hand finds mine in the darkness, and this time there's nothing accidental about the way our fingers intertwine. The room holds us in its small embrace, while the world outside continues its oblivious rotation. In this moment, suspended between acknowledgement and action, I can feel the weight of everything we haven't said, everything we've been carefully not seeing. The way he looks at me when he thinks I'm not watching. The way I've started choosing softer shirts to sleep in. The careful dance we perform each morning, pretending that sharing a bed means nothing more than practical comfort. "I think I'm falling," he whispers against my shoulder, and the words are barely audible, but they resonate through my body like a bell struck in a cathedral. "I think I've been falling for a while, and I don't know how to stop." Before I can respond, before I can think too hard about what this means or what comes next, he shifts again. This time, his lips brush against my ear as he speaks, so softly that the words feel more like breath than sound. "I don't want to stop." The sensation of his mouth, so close to my skin, sends a shiver through me that has nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with want. The kind of one I've been pushing down for so long that I'd almost convince myself it didn't exist. But it does exist, and it's been growing in the space between comfort and desire, in the territory we've been exploring night after night without naming what we were discovering. My body answers before my mind can interfere, turning toward him in the darkness, closing the small distance that's been both protecting and torturing us. Our foreheads touch, then our noses, and we breathe each other's air in the space between intention and action. When our lips finally meet, it feels less like a first kiss and more like the completion of a sentence we've been writing together for months. Soft at first, tentative, a question asked and answered in the careful pressure of mouth against mouth. But then something deeper takes hold, and the kiss becomes an acknowledgement of everything we've been dancing around, everything we've been afraid to want. We break apart after what feels like both forever and not nearly long enough, breathing hard in the darkness. Neither of us speaks because words would require decisions, and right now we exist in the space between one truth and the next, in the moment where everything has changed but nothing has been decided. Outside, the world sleeps on. But here in my small bed, with his body warm against mine and the taste of honesty lingering between us, I know there's no going back to what we were before. Morning light has never felt so merciless. I wake to the sound of my alarm, harsh and insistent in the gray dawn, and for a disorienting moment, I can't remember why my chest feels tight with anxiety. Then awareness floods back. The kiss, the whispered confessions, the way his body had pressed against mine in the darkness with an urgency that spoke of months of restraint finally breaking. He's already gone from my bed. I can hear the shower running, the same morning routine we've maintained for months, but now every familiar sound carries new weight. The way he clears his throat before he sings off-key in the shower. The cabinet door closing as he reaches for his toothbrush. The soft pad of his feet across the bathroom floor. These sounds that once felt like home now make my stomach clench with uncertainty. I lie in bed longer than usual, staring at the indentation his head left on the pillow beside me. The sheets still smell like him, a combination of laundry detergent and something uniquely warm that I've never been able to identify. In the clear light of morning, last night feels both impossibly real and like something I might have dreamed. The memory of his lips against mine, soft and tentative and then urgent, plays on repeat in my mind until I'm not sure if I'm remembering or inventing. When I finally emerge from my room, he's already in the kitchen, fully dressed, pouring coffee into his usual mug. He glances up when I appear in the doorway, and for a split second our eyes meet. The look that passes between us is loaded with everything we share in the darkness, but it lasts only a moment before he turns his attention back to the coffee maker. "Good morning," he says, and his voice sounds almost normal. "Almost." "Morning," I reply, and the word feels foreign in my mouth, like I'm speaking a language I used to know fluently, but have somehow forgotten overnight. The kitchen, which has always been small, now feels impossibly tiny. Every step requires careful navigation to avoid brushing against him. Every movement choreographed to maintain the space between us. When he reaches past me for the sugar, I inhale sharply at his proximity, and I see his hand hesitate for just a moment, as if he's felt the same electric charge I have. We perform a morning routine we've perfected over months of shared living, but now it feels like we're actors who've forgotten their lines. The easy rhythm is broken, replaced by a careful politeness that makes my skin itch with discomfort. He makes toast and offers me half. The same gesture he's made hundreds of times before, but when I take it from his hand, our fingers brush and he pulls away too quickly. "I have class at 9, he says, checking his phone, though we both know he knows what time it is. The words hang in the air like an excuse, a reason to escape the tension that's filling our small space like smoke. "Yeah," I say. "Me too." 10:30. He nods and finishes his coffee standing at the counter, the same way he always does, but today he's looking out the window instead of scrolling through his phone. I sit at our small table with my laptop, pretending to review notes for my developmental psychology exam. but the words blur together as I sneak glances at his profile. In daylight, he looks like the same person he's always been. Same rumpled hair that refuses to lie flat in the morning. Same tendency to leave his sleeves pushed up to his elbows. Same unconscious way of tapping his fingers against his coffee mug while he thinks. But something fundamental has shifted, and I can't shake the feeling that we're both pretending to be versions of ourselves that no longer exist. The silence between us grows heavier as the minutes pass. Normally, our mornings are filled with casual conversation, complaints about professors, plans for the weekend, random observations about the neighbors or the weather. But today, every potential topic of conversation feels loaded with subtext. How can we discuss weekend plans when we don't know what we are to each other? How can we make casual jokes when the memory of his breath against my ear is still making my pulse race? When he finally leaves for class, the goodbye is stilted. He pauses at the door, keys in hand, and for a moment, I think he might say something about last night. But instead, he just says he'll see me later, and the words carry a question mark that neither of us acknowledges. The apartment feels different after he's gone. Not empty exactly, but charged with his absence in a way that's new. I walk through our shared spaces, the living room where we've spent countless evenings, the kitchen where we've shared so many meals, and everything looks the same but feels altered, like I'm seeing familiar object through a filter that changes their meaning. I try to focus on my classes, on the exam I have next week, on the research paper that's due Friday. But concentration feels impossible when my mind keeps returning to the sensation of his hand in mine, the way he said my name in the darkness like it meant something sacred. I find myself wondering what he's thinking as he sits through his business lectures, whether he's as distracted as I am, whether he regrets what happened or wants it to happen again. The day passes in a haze of half attention and anxiety. I drink too much coffee and retain nothing from my psychology seminar. I catch myself checking my phone obsessively, though he's never been one to text during classes, and today is no different. The silence from him feels pointed, deliberate, though I know I'm probably reading too much into it. By the time I hear his key in the lock that evening, my nerves are stretched thin as wire. I'm sitting on the couch with a textbook open in my lap, though I haven't turned a page in 20 minutes. When he appears in the living room doorway, we look at each other across the small space that feels vast with unspoken questions. "Hey," he says, and there's something tentative in his voice that matches the uncertainty in my chest. "Hey," I reply, and we're back to single syllables, back to the careful politeness that makes everything feel wrong. He sits on the opposite end of the couch, farther away than he usually would, and we both pretend to watch the news while the weight of everything unsaid settles between us like a living thing. The distance feels like a chasm, and I realize with startling clarity that I'm terrified, not of what happened between us, but of losing it, of returning to the careful boundaries of mere friendship when I've tasted something deeper, something that felt like coming home and falling off a cliff at the same time. The evening stretches ahead of us, full of choices we're both afraid to make. The resolution comes not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with the kind of quiet surrender that defines how we've always moved toward each other, slowly, carefully, like two people learning a dance they've never been taught. 3 days pass in this strange limbo. 3 days of polite mornings and careful distances, of conversations about groceries and class schedules that skirt around the weight of everything unsaid. We exist in parallel lines through our shared space, close enough to feel each other's presence, but never quite touching, never quite acknowledging what hangs between us like morning fog. On Thursday evening, I find him exactly where I knew I would, on the couch in our small living room, the television flickering with some documentary he's not really watching. The blue light plays across his face, highlighting the exhaustion that's been building in his features over these careful days. He looks smaller somehow, diminished by the effort of maintaining distance from someone who shares his daily life. I stand in the doorway for a moment, watching him. His shoulders are curved inward in a way that speaks of internal retreat, of someone trying to take up less space in the world. It's so unlike his usual easy confidence that something in my chest clenches with protective tenderness. The documentary is about ocean migration patterns, narrated by a voice that's probably meant to be soothing, but sounds hollow in our charged silence. Reese stares at the screen without really seeing it, his body curled into the corner of the couch like he's trying to disappear into the cushions. I move across the room without deciding to, drawn by an instinct deeper than thought. When I reach the couch, I don't ask permission. Instead, I simply pick up the throw blanket we keep draped over the back, the soft gray one his mother sent when we first moved in, and settle it around his shoulders. The gesture is simple, domestic, the kind of small care that passes between people who've learned each other's needs. But in the context of these strained days, it feels like a bridge thrown across the chasm we've built between us. He looks up at me as I arrange the blanket, and something in his expression cracks open. Not into tears, but into something more vulnerable, the kind of raw honesty that comes when pretending becomes too exhausting to maintain. "Thank you," he says, and the words carry more weight than gratitude for a blanket. They carry acknowledgement of the care, of the choice I've made to move toward him instead of away, of the fact that we've both been drowning in the space we've put between ourselves. I should sit in the chair across the room, should maintain the careful distance we've been preserving. Instead, I find myself settling beside him on the couch, not touching but close enough that I can feel his warmth, close enough that the blanket could cover us both if we wanted it to. We sit like that as the documentary drones on about whale songs and current patterns, neither of us really watching, but both of us hyper-aware of the other's presence. The silence between us is different now. Not the charged avoidance of the past few days, but something softer, more patient. Like we're both waiting for permission to be what we've always been when the world isn't watching. Finally, without looking at me, he speaks. "I miss this," he says quietly. "I miss being able to just exist with you without everything feeling complicated." The confession hangs in the air between us, honest and tired and achingly familiar. Because I miss it too. I miss the easy intimacy that came before we named what was happening, before consciousness made everything feel dangerous and loaded with consequence. It doesn't have to be complicated, I tell him, though I'm not sure either of us believes it. We make it complicated by thinking about it too much. He turns to look at me, then really look at me, and I can see him working through something internal, some calculation of risk and reward that I recognize because I've been doing the same math for days. "I don't want to lose this," he says, gesturing at the space between us, at the accumulated intimacy of months of shared living. "Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I don't want to lose what we have." The fear in his voice mirrors my own, and I realize that we've both been operating from the same terror, not of moving forward, but of losing what we've built in the process, of discovering that naming what exists between us might somehow diminish it. "You won't," I tell him, and as I say it, I know it's true. Whatever we become, whatever we call this, it's built on something too solid to disappear overnight. As if testing the truth of my words, he reaches for my hand. Not dramatically, not with the weight of seduction or romance, but with the simple need for contact that has always defined how we move toward each other. His fingers find mine and intertwine with the ease of habit, of bodies that have learned each other's geography in the dark. The gesture breaks whatever spell has been keeping us careful and separate. Without discussion, without decision, he shifts closer on the couch, and I lift my arm to make space for him. He settles against my side with the same natural movement he's used dozens of times before, his head finding the hollow of my shoulder, his body arranging itself along mine like we're puzzle pieces designed to fit together. The blanket covers us both now, creating a small cocoon of warmth and shared breath. On the television, whales sing to each other across vast distances, their voices carrying messages of location and longing through dark water. But I'm barely listening because Reese has gone still in my arms, his breathing evening out into the rhythm that means he's finally allowing himself to rest. "Stay," he whispers against my chest, so quietly I might have imagined it if not for the way his hand tightens slightly on my shirt. The word is barely audible, more breath and sound, but it carries the weight of everything we've been afraid to ask for. I settle deeper into the couch, my arms tightening around him in answer. On the screen, the documentary continues its exploration of creatures who navigate by instinct across impossible distances, following currents they can't see toward destinations they've never been, but somehow know. And here in our small living room, with his trust warm against my chest and the television's blue glow painting shadows on the walls, I finally understand that some journeys don't require maps or declarations or even conscious decision. Sometimes they just require the courage to stop running from where you've already arrived.